You know, normally when we talk about cause and effect, the rules of reality feel, I don't know, pretty solid.
Right, yeah. Unbreakable, basically.
Exactly. Like you drop a glass on a tile floor, it shatters, you hear a sudden loud noise right behind you, and your autonomic nervous system kicks in, your heart rate spikes, you jump.
Yes. Cause and then effect.
Right, cause then effect.
Yeah.
It is the absolute bedrock of how we understand our entire day-to-day existence. It's linear and, it's comforting.
It is the foundation of classical physics, honestly, and basic biology.
Right.
Action, then reaction.
Yeah.
Past, present, future, strictly in that unyielding sequence. I mean, we build our entire lives, our legal systems, our scientific methods around this massive assumption that time only flows in one direction.
But then you start looking into the phenomenon of the human gut feeling.
Which is where things get messy.
Oh, totally messy. And I don't mean a vague sense of anxiety about, like, a performance review at work.
Right, right. Not just everyday stress.
No, I am talking about those visceral, terrifying moments of inexplicable, impending doom. That uncanny sensation that warns you of a disaster, an accident, a violent confrontation, or even death hours, or sometimes days before it actually happens.
Which breaks all those rules we just talked about.
Completely breaks them. When you look at the data behind that, the solid ground of cause and effect just completely vanishes. We end up looking at a sequence of events that is, well, it's entirely backwards.
It is the absolute definition of a chronological paradox.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to figure out the true nature of these premonitions. We are going to tear into this massive body of research, declassified military documents, and theoretical physics to answer one huge question.
The big one.
Right. Are our brains simply doing hyperfast unconscious math based on subtle environmental clues? Or is it possible, as some highly controversial quantum physics models suggest, that human biology is literally physically sensing the future before it arrives?
A heavy question.
It is. So, okay, let's unpack this. I want you, if you're listening right now, to think about a time in your own life when you had a terrible, sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach for absolutely no logical reason.
We've all been there.
We have. Your palms are sweating, your vision narrows, your heart is racing, and then shortly after, something awful actually happens. It's the kind of experience that really shakes your foundational understanding of the world.
It is a profound, incredibly common human experience. But to understand the wilder, more reality-breaking theories about why this happens, the physics that suggests time is an illusion we first have to establish the baseline.
Right, we have to start with what we know.
Exactly. We need to look closely at the mainstream scientific view of how the human brain supposedly predicts danger.
Oh.
Because traditional neuroscience does not like mysteries.
No, they hate them.
And it certainly does not like time travel.
Definitely not. Mainstream science wants a clean biological explanation, and the prevailing theory is that the brain is essentially, well, an unconscious prediction machine. If you're listening to this, you probably already know your brain takes in millions of data points every single second. If you were consciously aware of all of them, you'd short circuit.
You wouldn't be able to walk down the street. It would be overwhelming.
Right. So how does the mainstream model explain the gut feeling?
Well, we operate on a framework known in cognitive science as predictive processing.
Okay.
The traditional explanation is that your gut feeling is the result of rapid, unconscious processing of patterns and microscopic anomalies in your environment.
Like things we don't even realize we're seeing.
Precisely. Your brain recognizes familiar situations in a fraction of a second. It processes subtle changes like a micro-expression on someone's face, a slight dip in the ambient temperature, a shift in the acoustic profile of a room, or even your own internal physiological fatigue.
Wow, so it's constantly scanning.
Constantly. It does the math instantly and sends a physical alarm signal to your enteric nervous system, your gut, before your conscious analytical mind even has time to construct a coherent thought about the threat.
Which, I mean, that makes perfect evolutionary sense, right?
Oh, absolutely.
If you are a prehistoric human and you unconsciously register the specific rustle of a predator in the brush, you do not want your analytical brain to pause and ponder the genus and species of the cat about to eat you.
No, you'd be dead.
Right. You want your body to flood with cortisol and adrenaline instantly so you can just run.
The gut feeling in this classical model is purely a rapid response survival mechanism. And this is exactly why the mainstream scientific community brings such intense skepticism to anything that smells like a quote-unquote psychic premonition.
They want to ground it in biology.
Exactly. Traditional researchers are very quick to attribute stories of future prediction to well-documented psychological quirks.
Right, they lean heavily on confirmation bias and selective memory.
They do. The argument goes like this: human beings are pattern-seeking animals.
We hate randomness.
We abhor it. So, confirmation bias dictates that you vividly remember the one Tuesday morning you had a terrible feeling and then got rear-ended in traffic.
Oh, sure.
But you conveniently forget the thousands of other mornings you woke up with a bad feeling, maybe due to mild indigestion or poor sleep, went about your day, and absolutely nothing happened.
Because we are meaning-making machines, we actively construct a narrative out of random chaos to feel like we're in control.
Furthermore, researchers often point to selective perception and memory reconstruction.
Meaning we change our own memories.
Yes, memory is not a video recording, it is highly malleable. If you experience a sudden trauma in the chaotic aftermath, your brain retroactively fills in the details to make sense of the shock.
Oh, I see.
You might convince yourself that you knew it all along, or that you had a profound sense of dread that morning, when in reality you were just experiencing normal, everyday baseline stress.
Okay, I hear that. I completely understand the logic of the predictive processing model. It's clean, it makes biological sense.
It does.
But here's where I really have to push back on the sources, because that explanation has a massive glaring blind spot.
And what's that?
That entire model relies entirely on there being some kind of signal in the present moment for the unconscious brain to pick up on.
A stimulus.
Right, a stimulus. But what happens when the environment is completely sterile of clues?
And that is the friction point.
Yeah.
That's exactly what divides the neuroscientists from the parapsychologists and the quantum physicists.
Because you need clues for the math to work.
The traditional model absolutely requires a stimulus. Without a stimulus, there could be no algorithmic prediction.
So let me throw a scenario at you that is heavily documented in the research we looked at.
Okay, lay it on me.
Imagine a person wakes up in their own bed. It's a perfectly safe, quiet house in the suburbs. The dog is sleeping. The thermostat is perfect.
A total neutral environment.
Exactly. They had a great night's sleep. Their heart rate variability is optimal. There's no stress in their life, zero visual cues of danger, no auditory anomalies. They are in a perfectly neutral baseline state.
Okay.
But suddenly, out of nowhere, they are hit with a horrific, overwhelming gut feeling, a profound, suffocating sense of dread.
Like a panic attack out of the blue.
Right. So they leave the house, they get in their car, drive toward work on an empty road, and out of nowhere, a drunk driver runs a red light and hits them in a massive, unpredictable accident.
Right.
And here is the kicker, the specific detail that shows up again and again in these reports immediately after the crash. The exact second the metal crumples, that gut feeling completely vanishes.
And that specific scenario directly challenges the unconscious pattern recognition theory.
How so?
Because we have to ask, what pattern was there to recognize in a quiet, safe bedroom an hour before the accident even occurred?
Exactly.
How do you unconsciously calculate the trajectory of a drunk driver who is miles away?
You can't. You literally can't. The mainstream view is like saying you deduce a fire because you unconsciously smell the smoke.
All right.
But we are talking about the smoke detector going off before the match is even struck. There is no smoke yet. There is no fire.
There's no data.
Right. There are no environmental cues to trigger that predictive coding framework. So how does the biological alarm know to sound?
This raises an incredibly important question. If we cannot attribute these specific clue-free premonitions to subtle environmental shifts or, memory reconstruction, how do we explain the vast, incredibly dense historical records where no such clues could have possibly existed?
Which takes us right out of the realm of everyday traffic accidents and plunges us into the trenches of extreme human endurance.
The historical data.
Because this isn't just a modern suburban phenomenon. When you dive into the historical documentation of these inexplicable gut feelings, the data becomes staggeringly dense in extreme life or death environments.
War.
Yeah. Wars provide the ultimate stress test for human biology.
They do. And the records point us specifically toward the diaries, letters, and journals from soldiers, medics, and nurses during World War I or World War II.
Reading through these archival accounts is honestly chilling. You have hundreds of documented instances of soldiers waking up on a random Tuesday in the trenches of the Somme or Passchendaele.
Right.
And they just knew, with an absolute, unshakable certainty, that they or someone specific in their unit would be struck by artillery or sniper fire that day.
And the crucial context to understand here, and this is exactly why this baffles military historians, is that there was no change in the tactical situation on these specific days.
It wasn't a big push.
No, it wasn't the morning of a massive planned offensive where every man in the trench is naturally terrified and anticipating death. It was a standard routine day.
As routine as a trench can be.
Right. There was no extra shelling, no intelligence reports of an impending attack, no visual cues in the no man's land. The baseline level of danger was constant, yet the gut feeling was a sudden, undeniable spike. It was highly specific, and it was acute.
But wait, a skeptic listening to this would just say, come on, they were in a war zone. Of course they had a feeling of impending doom.
Sure.
How do we actually differentiate a generalized anxiety disorder triggered by combat from a genuine anomalous premonition?
Well, you differentiate it by the sudden onset and the absolute behavioral shift it caused.
What kind of shift?
These weren't men suffering from general combat fatigue. These were seasoned, hardened veterans who suddenly exhibited a profound, uncharacteristic certainty of their own immediate demise.
Like acting totally out of character.
Exactly. They would often start giving away their prized possessions or writing final definitive letters home on a day with absolutely no scheduled action. And more importantly, the phenomenon was so prevalent and documented that it wasn't just written off as shell shock by the commanding officers.
And we know the military took it seriously, right? Because they didn't just leave it in the history books of the World Wars.
Not at all.
Fast forward to the 2010s, and the U.S. military actually ran a formal classified program called Spy-Sense.
Yes.
Sometimes it's referred to broadly in declassified circles as the Premonition Program, specifically active during the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yes, and we really have to remember that the military is a highly pragmatic, results-driven institution.
They aren't funding ghost hunts.
Exactly. They do not typically allocate budget, time, and resources to investigate fringe science without a compelling operational reason. They initiated this program to investigate reports of soldiers on patrol who possessed an uncanny, statistically impossible ability to sense improvised explosive devices.
IEDs.
Right, or incoming ambushes long before any visual, auditory, or tactical evidence was available.
I really want to dig into that. How does a soldier sense a buried wire? Like, what were they actually doing on patrol that triggered this whole multi-million-dollar program?
Well, the declassified reports detailed soldiers who would be driving in a convoy or walking a standard urban patrol route. Suddenly, a specific soldier would demand the convoy halt entirely or refuse to turn a specific corner.
Just freeze up.
Yes. And when questioned by their superiors, they couldn't point to disturbed dirt. They couldn't point to an absence of civilian activity in the market, which, by the way, are the standard unconscious visual clues for an ambush.
Right, the predictive processing clues.
Exactly. They didn't have those. They simply reported a sudden, overwhelming physiological sickness, a literal gut feeling.
Wow.
And in an astonishing number of these documented cases, bomb disposal units would then move up and find a perfectly hidden IED exactly where the soldier refused to go.
That is insane.
The military wanted to know, what is the mechanism here? Are their retinas picking up on visual data that the conscious brain ignores, or is it something else entirely?
They were trying to reverse engineer the sixth sense so they could train it.
Yes.
But, the military wasn't the first to try and put a metric on this. Long before the modern wars, there were pioneers in academia trying to rigorously categorize this anomaly. We have to look at the work of J.B. Rhine and Louisa Rhine at Duke University.
Ah, yes. The Rhines.
This stretches from the 1950s all the way through the 1970s.
J.B. Rhine is a monumental, if highly controversial, figure in the history of psychology.
Very controversial.
He essentially founded the academic study of parapsychology in the United States. He and his wife, Louisa, collected over 400 meticulously detailed cases of premonitions from the general public.
400 cases?
Yes. These were instances where everyday people, and interestingly, even animals, sensed accidents, deaths, and disasters days in advance.
Okay, but we have to play devil's advocate here for a second. The mainstream scientific community absolutely eviscerated Ryan's work at the time.
They tore it apart.
If you're listening to this and you have any background in statistics or research design, you're probably screaming at your dashboard right now about his methodology.
And you would be absolutely right to scream. It is critical to be objective about the flaws in early parapsychology.
What were the main issues?
Well, Ryan's early work was heavily criticized for what we now call p-hacking.
Which is manipulating the data to fit the hypothesis.
Exactly. Cherry-picking data to find statistical significance after the fact. His critics pointed out severe mathematical errors in his probability models, massive confirmation bias, and a startling lack of rigorous double-blind laboratory controls.
So the conditions were sloppy.
Very sloppy by modern standards. The mainstream consensus was that his findings were the result of bad science, rather than genuine psychic phenomena.
Right. If you run a card-guessing experiment enough times and only publish the results that look like magic, you aren't doing science, you're doing PR.
Exactly. However, and this is a big hill, however, we cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater here.
Okay.
While Rain's laboratory mechanics were deeply flawed, the sheer volume of the anecdotal database he and Louisa collected cannot be entirely ignored.
You just can't fake 400 distinct, highly corroborated accounts.
Right. And when you combine their civilian cases with the World War diaries, and then add the modern military reports from the Spy Sense program, a massive, undeniable pattern emerges.
It's a mountain of data.
It is. It suggests a biological and chronological phenomenon that demands rigorous, modern, controlled investigation, not just an out-of-hand dismissal based on 1950s procedural errors.
And there is one crucial common denominator in almost all of these historical, civilian, and military stories. It's a detail I find totally fascinating because it completely breaks the psychological anxiety model we talked about earlier.
The release of tension.
Yes, the overwhelming, suffocating gut feeling completely vanishes the exact microsecond the predicted event occurs.
That is a vital piece of the puzzle.
Because if this were simply a generalized anxiety disorder, or the result of a hyperactive amygdala misfiring,
then the stress response would compound when the traumatic event actually happened.
right, the trauma would stack. You're already stressed, then a bomb goes off, you should be infinitely more stressed.
But it doesn't do that. It functions exactly like a biological alarm that is manually, instantly switched off the moment the threat materializes.
Have you ever experienced the listener, have you ever had a feeling of dread that was so heavy you could barely breathe? A tension that ruined your whole day, and then the moment the bad thing actually happens.
The crash, the phone call.
Yeah, the moment the car crashes, or you get that terrible phone call you were dreading, you experience a sudden, almost inappropriate physiological release of tension. The dread just evaporates, replaced by the cold, hard reality of the situation.
It points to a mechanism that is strictly anticipatory.
Anticipatory.
Yes. The body is reacting to a future state, and once that state becomes the present, the anticipation is mathematically resolved.
But stories, diaries, and military field anecdotes are one thing. They are messy, they are full of human error and bias.
They are.
So if these accounts are so prevalent, the real question is, has anyone actually managed to capture this anticipatory phenomenon in a controlled, modern laboratory setting, away from the chaos of a battlefield or the biases of a 1950s psychology lab?
They have. And this is where the conversation shifts drastically.
Let's get into the lab.
We move out of historical anecdotes and enter the highly precise realm of modern neurobiology and present-day parapsychology. The real breakthrough work here comes from researchers like Dean Radin.
Okay, Dean Radin.
Yes, who has been rigorously testing this from the 1990s all the way to the present day, and also Dr. Julia Mossbridge, a cognitive neuroscientist formerly associated with Northwestern University and the Institute of Noetic Sciences, or IONS.
Okay, stop right there for a second because this sounds mathematically impossible. How do you test spontaneous life-or-death gut feeling in a sterile lab? You can't exactly ask a college undergrad to sit in a chair and predict a car crash.
No, obviously you can't induce actual physical trauma. Ethical review boards wouldn't love that.
No, I imagine not.
But you can test the microexpressions of that survival mechanism through a phenomenon they call presentiment.
Presentiment, like presentiment.
Exactly. Anticipatory physiological activity. And the methodology they developed is brilliant in its simplicity and its absolute uncompromising rigor.
How does it work?
Participants are brought into a completely sterile lab environment. They are shielded from any external electromagnetic or auditory interference.
A completely dead room.
Yes. They are then hooked up to a variety of highly sensitive biometric monitors.
So we are talking about the polygraph on steroids.
Essentially, yes. They use sensors measuring autonomic nervous system reactions.
Okay, so things you can't control.
Right. High-resolution electrocardiograms to track minute variations in heart rate, skin conductance tests to measure microscopic sweating.
Because sweating is a primary indicator of stress, right?
Yes, it's sympathetic nervous system arousal. And they also use EEG caps to track localized brainwave spikes.
So they are measuring the body's deeply unconscious physical reactions, the exact same bodily functions that trigger the macro sensation of a gut feeling, just dialed down to a microscopic, measurable level.
Precisely. Now here's the setup. The participant sits in front of a blank computer screen.
Okay.
The computer is programmed with a true random number generator, or TRNG. Yes. And it is vital to understand what a TRNG is compared to standard computer randomness.
Right, because most computers just use algorithms.
Exactly. Most computer randomness, like shuffling a playlist on your phone, is pseudo-random. It relies on a predictable algorithm. If you know the math, you know the next song.
It's a formula.
But a TRNG derives its randomness from physical quantum phenomena.
Like what? Measuring atmospheric noise?
Yes, atmospheric noise or even radioactive decay.
Wow.
This ensures that the computer's choice is fundamentally, unequivocally unpredictable. It is mathematically impossible to know what the computer will do next because the universe itself hasn't decided yet.
Okay, so we have a perfectly random system. Then what happens to the person in the chair?
At random intervals, the computer will select and flash an image on the screen. The vast majority of the images are emotionally neutral. A picture of a wooden chair, a calm landscape, maybe a coffee cup.
Boring stuff.
Very boring. But occasionally, the computer will randomly select a highly negative, horrific, or shocking image.
To trigger them.
Yes. Think of severe medical anomalies, scenes of violence, or a venomous snake poised to strike.
They are deliberately triggering a biological fight-or-flight stress response.
Yes. And naturally, when the horrific image flashes on the screen, the bioelectric monitors go wild.
Right, the heart rate jumps, they start sweating.
Exactly. The participant's heart rate spikes, their skin conductance shoots up as they begin to microscopically sweat, and the EEG shows a massive spike in the visual cortex and the amygdala.
Well, yeah, that is totally normal. That is classic cause and effect. The stimulus occurs, the biology reacts.
True. But if that were the whole experiment, we wouldn't be talking about it today. That's just basic biology.
Right. So where is the anomaly?
What's fascinating here is what the data reveals about the moments before the image is shown. Yes. When researchers look at the continuous stream of biometric data, they find that participants' bodies show statistically significant stress reactions. Their heart rate elevates. Their skin begins to conduct electricity differently. Their brain waves spike between 1 to 10 seconds before the horrific image is actually displayed on the screen.
Wait, I want to make sure the listener is completely absorbing the gravity of this. You are saying that the human body is reacting to a terrifying picture before the eyes actually see it.
I am.
That is...
But it is even more profound than that. The physiological reaction occurs 1 to 10 seconds before the picture is shown, right?
Yeah.
But the true random number generator only selects the image milliseconds before it appears.
Oh my God.
This means the participant's body is reacting before the computer has even randomly chosen which image to display.
That is mind-bending, because that completely categorically eliminates the mainstream argument of subtle environmental clues.
It destroys it.
There are 0 subtle clues in that room. The computer hasn't even made the mathematical decision yet. The math hasn't happened. The quantum noise hasn't settled. There is absolutely nothing in the present environment for the unconscious brain to pick up on.
And that is the crux of the presentiment anomaly. There is no physical data in the present space-time environment indicating that a threat is coming.
None at all.
Yet the human nervous system is ringing the alarm bell anyway.
But hold on, I have to play the skeptic again here. How do the researchers know the EEG spikes and the sweating aren't just the participant getting restless or anxious about the anticipation itself? Like if I'm sitting in a dark room waiting for a scary picture, my heart is going to be beating fast the whole time.
That is a very standard critique, and the experimental design completely accounts for it.
Ow!
The baseline anxiety is continuously measured and factored out of the data. The statistical significance comes from the fact that the anticipatory stress response only spikes significantly in the seconds preceding a negative image.
Oh, I see.
When the computer is about to randomly show a picture of a chair, the pre-stimulus baseline remains flat. The body only ramps up when the future event is traumatic.
It knows the difference between a chair and a snake before the computer does.
Precisely.
Okay, but this field of study has a very spotty reputation. I know that back in 2011, a major researcher named Daryl Bem published a highly publicized paper on precognition that totally fell apart upon peer review.
Yes, Daryl Bem's Feeling the Future study. It was a watershed moment, but also a huge cautionary tale.
What happened with it?
He claimed to find evidence of precognition in cognitive tasks, like having students guess where a hidden image was. It was a conscious choice.
Okay.
But subsequent researchers struggled massively to replicate his findings, which cast a massive shadow over the whole field. Critics rightly pointed to methodological flaws and statistical biases.
Right. So how is Dean Radin's work any different? Why should we trust the presentiment data if BEM's work collapsed?
Because of the biological, automated nature of the data and the sheer volume of successful replication.
Right, because you can't fake a heartbeat.
Exactly. BEM was testing conscious cognitive choices, which are incredibly messy and prone to bias. Radin and Mossbridge are testing autonomic nervous system responses, which you cannot easily fake or consciously manipulate.
That makes sense.
While cognitive tests fail to replicate, the specific physiological presentiment experiments designed by Radin have been remarkably resilient. These tests, measuring heart rate and skin conductance before random events, have been replicated roughly 40 times.
40 times?
Yes, in various independent laboratories globally, by skeptics and proponents alike, up to the years 2025 and 2026.
40 independent replications is a massive threshold in modern science. You can't just ignore that.
It is. The statistical odds of this phenomenon being a mere chance artifact are astronomically low.
Oh, wow.
In fact, this specific physiological anomaly was even investigated seriously by the CIA during their exploration of unconventional intelligence gathering in the 1990s.
Like the Stargate project.
Exactly. Programs that conceptually overlapped with Stargate. They were looking for any statistically significant edge in human perception, and Presentiment showed undeniable, repeatable biological data.
So we're left with a biologically measurable, statistically significant reaction to an event that has not yet occurred in linear time.
Yes. And Dr. Julia Mossbridge refers to this physiological reaction beautifully in her analyses.
What does she call it?
She calls it a memory from the future.
I love that phrase so much. A memory from the future. But if you were listening to this right now, I know what you were thinking. This sounds like actual magic or science fiction.
It feels impossible.
We are conditioned to reject this entirely, but we are talking about hard biometric data gathered from sterile laboratories. This isn't just a psychological quirk or a memory bias anymore.
No, the data moves it past psychology.
If your sweat glands activate and your brain waves spike before a computer makes a quantum random choice, we're dealing with a fundamental breakdown of how we understand time itself. Biology alone cannot explain this.
And that is exactly where the scientific paradigm has to pivot.
We have to leave the biology lab.
We do. To explain this rigorously replicated lab data, we have to leave the boundaries of traditional neuroscience behind. The brain isn't just an isolated biological machine, it exists within the physical universe. It is subject to the macro laws of physics.
Right.
And to understand how a gut feeling reaches backward in time, we have to enter the realm of theoretical physics.
Because if the presentiment data is real, our classical model of reality is it's incomplete.
Highly incomplete.
So let's talk about the physics. The historical and scientific data we are looking at introduces concepts that are firmly rooted in Albert Einstein's 1905 theory of relativity.
Yes. Einstein completely revolutionized our understanding of space and time.
How so, for those who might need a refresher?
Well, before Einstein, we viewed time as a universal ticking clock, completely separate from the three dimensions of physical space.
Like a metronome running in the background of the universe.
Exactly. But Einstein showed that they are not separate entities at all. They are an interwoven four-dimensional fabric called space-time.
Space-time.
Right. And from this framework emerged a concept in physics that is absolutely critical to our deep dive today, the block universe.
The block universe. Okay, this is where my mind started doing absolute backflips when I was reading the source material for this discussion.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is. Because we all naturally perceive time as a linear river, right? It flows endlessly from the past, through the brief present moment, and into the unknown, unformed future.
That's the subjective experience, yes.
We deeply believe the past is gone and dead, the future doesn't exist yet, and only the current now is real.
That is our evolutionary human experience of time. It is how our brains are wired to perceive change. But the block universe theory, which is a highly credible, mathematically sound interpretation of general relativity, suggests that this linear perception is entirely an illusion.
An illusion?
Yes. In this model, the universe is a solid, four-dimensional block of space-time. In this block, every event that has ever happened, is currently happening, or will ever happen, exists simultaneously.
Wait, So the past, the present, and the future are all equally real. They all exist at once right now, suspended in this block.
Correct. In the block universe, a person's entire life, from the exact moment of their birth to the exact second of their death, and every single cup of coffee they drink in between is already present, locked within this four-dimensional structure.
It doesn't happen sequentially.
No, it just simply is.
Okay, let me use an analogy from the sources to help visualize this, because it is incredibly difficult to wrap a human brain around four-dimensional geometry.
Please do.
Imagine your life isn't a movie playing out frame by frame on a projector screen where you don't know the ending until the reel finishes. Instead, imagine your entire life is a fully printed, physical, heavy book.
A bound book.
Right. You, as a conscious observer, are just reading it page by page. Because you're reading it sequentially, word by word, time feels linear to you.
Your consciousness is moving along the page.
Exactly. You remember the chapters you've already read? That's your past. And you are blind to the chapters you haven't read yet. That's the future.
Right.
But the physical book itself is already completely bound. The last page is already printed. Every event, every car accident, every joy is already there in the physical object of the book.
That is an excellent, grounded way to visualize a very complex physical theory.
It helped me a lot.
And this brings us to the core quantum mechanism that bridges the gap between the printed book of the universe and the biological gut feeling in your stomach.
Okay, what's the bridge?
It is a concept in quantum mechanics known as retrocausality.
Retrocausality, literally backward causality.
Yes, effect preceding cause.
Which hurts to think about.
It does. In the standard Newtonian model of physics, causality only moves forward. The match is struck, the fire starts. But in the strange, counterintuitive world of quantum physics, some interpretations, such as the transactional interpretation of quantum mechanics, mathematically allow for information, energy, or even states of consciousness to flow backward through time.
Flow backward.
Yes. This means that a future event can exert a tangible, physical influence on the past.
So going back to the printed book analogy.
Let's do that.
If the book is already fully printed, your terrifying gut feeling isn't you miraculously, psychically predicting a future that hasn't happened yet?
No, not at all.
It's your body, your highly sensitive autonomic nervous system, somehow catching a glimpse of a paragraph on the next page before your conscious mind actually turns to it.
Precisely. If we connect the theoretical physics back to the macrobiology of the human nervous system, it creates a cohesive, breathtaking theory.
It really is beautiful when you put it together.
Let's assume consciousness, or the human nervous system, operates somewhat non-locally, meaning it isn't strictly bound by linear space and time.
Like quantum entanglement?
Very similar, yes. Entanglement allows two particles to be intimately connected and share information across vast distances instantly. If the brain utilizes quantum processing at a microscopic level, perhaps within the microtubules of neurons, as some modern theories suggest, then the physiological alarms are easily explained.
The sweating, the sudden dread.
Exactly. The racing heart, they are not a prediction, they are a leak or an echo from the traumatic future event that already firmly exists in the space-time block.
It's a traumatic echo bouncing backward.
Yes.
So the horrific car crash you're going to get into at 8 a.m. already exists further down the block of space-time, and the sheer traumatic, emotional, and physical kinetic energy of that event ripples backward through the medium of time.
Like dropping a stone in a pond.
Right, and your sensitive biological intent, your gut feels the ripple before your linear consciousness actually arrives at the event itself.
And if you apply this quantum framework, it brilliantly explains all the historical and civilian anomalies we discussed earlier.
Because there's no need for clues.
Exactly. And specifically, it explains the exact mechanism behind why the intense gut feeling entirely vanishes. The exact microsecond the terrible event actually happens.
Right. Why does the tension disappear when the car crashes?
Because the backward traveling echo stops.
You caught up to it.
You have finally caught up to the actual event in the space-time block. You are no longer feeling the anticipatory ripple of the future. You are now fully immersed in the present reality.
The circuit is closed.
Exactly. The biological alarm turns off because the future has become the now.
That is deeply unsettling, but logically it fits the data perfectly. It explains the zero-clues environment of the quiet suburban house. It explains why soldiers knew they were going to be hit on a quiet Tuesday.
It explains the 40 independent lab replications where the body sweats before the computer makes a choice.
It does. But wait, I have a major question about the logistics of this.
David.
If this echo is just an individual's unique nervous system reacting to their own future within the block universe,
Right.
how does this work when multiple people are involved? What happens when two entirely different people with entirely different nervous systems experience the exact same premonition at the exact same time?
That is a fascinating layer to this phenomenon, and it's something researchers have documented extensively. It's the concept of collective premonitions.
Because we hear about collective feelings of dread all the time, let's look at a very specific hypothetical scenario drawn from the aggregate of many real-world reports in the sources.
Okay, set the scene.
We have two casual work colleagues. They
Right.
work in construction or maybe on an oil rig. They are not best friends. They are not married. They don't hang out on weekends.
Casual acquaintances.
Exactly. They have no deep emotional bond, no long shared history, and certainly no telepathic twin connection. They just happen to be working the same shift on the same day.
Right.
Suddenly, out of absolutely nowhere, they both get the exact same terrible, sinking, nauseating gut feeling.
A simultaneous, synchronized physiological alarm.
Exactly. They both feel awful, tense, completely on edge. They might even look at each other and say, man, something feels really wrong today.
Hours go by. And then the equipment they are working on catastrophically fails. The job turns into a total disaster. A massive accident occurs. And at that exact synchronized moment of the explosion or the collapse, the terrible gut feeling vanishes for both of them simultaneously.
Now, to contrast this with established science, we can look at recent neurobiological twin studies, specifically high-resolution EEG tests conducted around 2025.
What did those show?
These studies have shown that identical twins can exhibit incredibly synchronized, predicting brain waves before a negative event occurs to one of them.
But they're twins.
Exactly. Twins share identical DNA and a profound, lifelong, highly entangled emotional bond. It is very easy for mainstream science to hand-wave that data away as a quirk of their extreme biological and environmental similarity.
Oh, their brains are just wired the same, so they react the same. That's the easy out.
Right.
But these casual coworkers on the oil rig don't have that. They have different DNA, different upbringings, different baseline anxiety levels. They just happen to be standing next to each other.
Correct. So how does a shared, perfectly timed gut feeling happen between two people who barely know each other?
If we connect this back to the bigger picture, we just established the physics of time. The block universe theory accounts for this perfectly.
It does.
Yes, and it does so without needing any mystical, supernatural, or telepathic explanation.
Okay, lay it on me. How does the block universe solve the coworker problem?
This shared gut feeling isn't about an emotional or telepathic bond between the two workers. They aren't broadcasting their anxiety to each other.
Okay.
It happens because both of those unique individuals, on their own separate timelines, are physically heading toward the exact same future event within the space-time block.
Oh, wow.
Do you see it?
I see where this is going. Let me use another analogy from the text because this really cemented the concept for me when I was wrestling with it.
Go for it.
It's the train analogy. Imagine two complete strangers sitting next to each other on a high-speed passenger train. They have never spoken, they don't know each other's names, they have absolutely zero emotional connection. But suddenly, they both violently brace themselves, gripping the armrests, their eyes widening right before the train derails.
Yes.
They don't brace because they are emotionally connected to each other. They brace because they are sitting on the exact same train, heading into the exact same catastrophic crash.
That is a perfect visualization of the physics at play.
It makes so much sense.
The echo from the future disaster. The derailment ripples backward through the firm block of space-time, and it hits anyone who is on the physical trajectory to experience it.
Wow.
Their proximity to the event in space-time is what unites their physiological response, not their proximity or emotional connection to each other.
That completely demystifies the whole concept of shared premonitions. It strips away all the woo-woo. It takes it out of the realm of the supernatural or the occult or the idea of having a special gift.
It's not a magical power bestowed upon certain enlightened people.
No. It is a universal, fundamental, physical reality of how our biology interacts with the quantum mechanics of time.
Exactly.
We are all moving through this four-dimensional block, and sometimes our nervous systems just bump into the backward-flowing echoes of our own future.
Which brings us to a really profound summary of our exploration today.
Yeah, let's tie this all together.
While these concepts, retrocausality, the block universe, presentiment, quantum biological receivers, are certainly not yet fully accepted by mainstream traditional science.
They're still fringe.
They are. but they can no longer be entirely ignored or relegated to that fringe.
There's too much data.
The combination of rigorously replicated laboratory data showing undeniable physiological reactions to future events, paired with a quantum physics framework that mathematically allows for backward time flow, provides a highly plausible, scientifically rigorous reason for why our guts so often know things that our conscious brains do not.
It is an absolutely wild, paradigm-shifting journey to go on.
It really is.
Let's just recap exactly where we've been today. We started with the very comfortable, safe, mainstream idea of the brain as an unconscious prediction machine, a biological supercomputer, recognizing subtle patterns in the present environment to keep us safe from predators.
The standard model.
Right. But then we saw the glaring cracks in that theory when the environment is completely devoid of clues. We moved through the strange, inexplicable anomalies found in historical battlefield diaries and modern military operations in the Middle East, where soldiers sensed invisible dangers with zero environmental evidence.
The anomalies that break the rule.
Then we dove deep into the sterile, rigorously controlled lab data of presentiment, seeing human sweat glands and heart rates react seconds before a true random number generator even made a mathematical choice.
The memory from the future.
Exactly. And finally, we blew the whole conceptual framework wide open with Einstein's block universe and the mind-bending reality of retrocausality, where the future is already fully printed and sending physical ripples backward to warn our nervous systems.
It completely challenges our most fundamental assumptions about reality, causality, and our place within the universe.
It does.
And it leaves us with a lingering, deeply provocative philosophical thought that builds on everything we've discussed today.
Let's hear it.
If the block universe is indeed the true nature of reality, if your entire life is a finished, bound book and the traumatic future is already written perfectly intact and merely sending you an echo backward in time in the form of a terrified gut feeling,
Yeah.
do you actually possess the free will to avoid that future?
Oh, wow.
If the smoke detector goes off because the house is already burned down in the future, can you change it? Or is your terrified reaction to the gut feeling and every frantic evasive action you take to avoid the disaster already printed in ink on the very next page of the book?
Whoa. Are we actively changing the future by listening to our gut, or are we just blindly playing our part in a script that was finished before we were even born?
That is the question.
That is a heavy, beautiful, terrifying thought to carry with you. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We've covered a lot of ground, from the trenches of history to the edge of quantum mechanics.
It's been a journey.
The next time you get that sudden, inexplicable knot in your stomach, maybe don't just brush it off as bad coffee or a stressful morning. Stop and pay attention. Trust your gut. It might just be a memory from your own future echoing backward to keep you safe.
Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time as we sign off from this session of the Deep Dive.